The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep you about 40 exciting minutes today. I see lots of people listening in, and I'm so encouraged. I do want to remind you to keep yourself on mute. Sometimes the technology is a bit peculiar, but make sure that on the left-hand side you can see the little microphone button. Mute that, hit it, and it'll keep things quiet if things aren't working. So that's fantastic. So let's just dig in. Journey mapping, what does the future hold? You know, what do I do now that I've created this map? Just a reminder about who I am. I am a comic book nerd. I love hockey. I sold Wayne Gretzky shirts in Siberia. I spent 183 days in hospital. My wife was in the Russian cosmonaut program. There are 2 kids in our family, my daughter 14, Andrew 12. Now I'm showing my screen. So you can see the pictures. I've written 5 books on fundraising, and I have a fundraising tattoo. Maybe we can do a session on fundraising tattoos. I'm going to go to the Royal Ontario Museum tomorrow and see the tattoo exhibit, so tattoos come to mind. So let's dig in today. There are those of you who have listened in before, and maybe even some people listening in for the first time. So our agenda today is looking at how we take journey mapping and take the next step forward. You know, we start with a problem. And when you do this exercise, start with problems to be solved. We'll take a look at that. We're going to call the map an assumptive map. And why would I choose that word? How does that give us an operational perspective? And I'm going to emphasize it again twice because it's so important. Start with a problem to solve before you begin the process so you can better operationalize your journey map. We're going to talk about listening posts as a part of operationalizing. And then we're going to get right down to 2 organizations, 3 examples of people using this best practice and moving forward. So today is really additional stops and thoughts and examples to better focus your journey mapping to be operationalized once you draw those maps. We're going to have way stations where we can stop and think for a minute together, like we did in our first session, all the way along. So you have to start with a problem to ultimately operationalize the journey. Journey mapping is most effective when we look for broken moments, places where there are problems to be solved, innovations to be thought of. If you haven't listened to the first session, go back and listen to that and listen to Sophia's story, but many of you have. So let's just keep moving forward and remember, let's have problems to solve. I have an example here of the Canadian Diabetes Association and how they framed the problems and the solutions as they went into the journey mapping session. They have an event called Team Diabetes. It's a special travel and endurance fundraising event. And so they stated 3 problems, defined and connected to the program's current priorities. And you can see they used a funnel to kind of focus the 3 problems. They started with the wide top of the funnel around outbound lead conversions, and the problem was registration rates. And so the problem is registration rates, and CDA needs to increase registration rates for leads acquired through community outreach to subsequently have them sign up and raise more money. Then they framed the middle of funnel problem, and that was once people have registered, so post-registration attrition, CDA needs to increase the percentage of registrants who meet their minimum fundraising goals. And then you can see they had a bottom of funnel problem, right? How to improve re-engagement, cross-selling and moves management with the people who do meet their fundraising goals. So I think for organizations who do events or organizations who are looking to have warm leads subsequently converted, this is a lovely problem setup way to look at journey mapping. So remember this. I think CDA was very smart to look at these problems down the funnel and take that back to your organization and make sure at the beginning of your journey mapping, you're thinking of problems and solving those problems as it relates to using journey mapping. So way station 1. Some of you may have already been journey mapping. So I say to you, and I ask you, did you build in problems to solve at the start of your journey mapping? So yes or no, write some things down. You might be writing reasons why you forgot, why you didn't have time, or you just didn't know that was a good part of the process. For those of you who haven't done journey mapping yet, right, remember this. This question is key, and you want to be able to say yes after you've done it by listening today. All right? So we'll move from way station 1. So some people call these journey maps assumptive maps. And why does that word assumptive, which is a pretty uncommon word, I'm not going to use that word very often, why does that word matter? What does it mean? So let's dig in and think about this. The reason people call journey maps assumptive maps is because you are making assumptions about people's behaviors and how they're reacting on the journey, and you're making assumptions about how they're feeling. So how do we have a process before we create these maps that does as good a job as possible to dealing with these assumptions? I put up the example as a reminder of what the OSPCA did when they did journey mapping a year and a half ago, that they made it empirically driven. You can see they exported data from their CRM, right? They did custom audience matching from social profiles like Facebook. They linked to other online web analytics to determine affinities for personas. They used genome mapping software. I always say it sounds weird, but how do you use software to sort the constituents? And then they output all of that data and analysis into the personas. So those are ways that you can get around the assumptive nature of a journey map before you do the journeys. Another way that you can get around the assumption is doing an analysis of your data. So let's say it's monthly donors and how they're performing over years, or how middle donors are performing. So doing a step back. You may work with a company like Blackbaud, who creates these things called OPA reports, which are really holistic reviews over time of different constituent groups. For us, it's looking for holes in the bucket, right? Where are we losing money? Where are attrition rates high? And you could use a company like Cornerstone as well. So there are lots of partners like this reporting on the screen from Blackbaud or from other partners. You want to do this kind of analysis to give you benchmarks, to give you the place to start with as you create the journeys for different personas and want to impact the data trends after this analysis based on the improvements your journey mapping makes. So journey mapping is the perfect time, I believe, to do a database analysis with partners like Blackbaud, for example, and others. So the assumptive nature of journey mapping. This was last week, and I was lucky enough to go to windy, rainy, sunny, weather changes every 10 minutes, Dublin, Ireland, and we had teams of people working on a middle-aged Irish woman who was going to participate in a fundraising event for the Irish Fundraising Society. And here they are working away with their very cute accents. So this was part of the assumptive model, right? That this is Emily, she's 56, she's returning to be a Relay for Life fundraiser for the Irish Cancer Society, and hey, lo and behold, the Relay for Life happens in many different countries. She uses a technology, Just Giving, to go online, make a page. You can see she's semi-retired teacher, new to Facebook and online. She cared for her mom before she passed, connected to local services, and she wants to get others to come and fundraise with her at the Relay. And then we had the behavior line. So for those of you who remember, this is the first line of stickies we put across from left to right in the narrative. For those of you who don't know this, let's go back and we'll make sure you have a link to listen to the last webinar that explains this through examples. And you can see all of the things that happened to her along the behavior line. So the team is working away on Emily, and on the top line in the yellow stickies on top, you can see they were writing down attitudes and emotions and feelings. And if you remember in our description, we're writing through I statements like, I'm excited to get the mail pack and begin to raise money for the Relay for Life again and remember my mom, right? I'm super frustrated by the online technology. I don't know how to use it. Or at the end of her journey in the behavior line, she doesn't raise as much as last year. So the I statement might be, I am so disappointed in myself, and I'm so disappointed in the experience, I may not do it again. So through this example, I want to remind you, there's a lot of creative thinking, and there are many assumptions being made about journey mapping around her emotions and feelings and her behaviors. So the journey map was created through assumptions, right, on emotions and feelings, and there are assumptions on the steps she's taking to complete tasks and to move along in her narrative. So why is that a challenge in operationalizing? It's a challenge because we need those assumptions being made about how she feels and what she's going to do. We need a quantitative way to check in with Emily as a persona. It could be that the Irish Cancer Society has 7,000 people who fit her middle-aged demographic and persona who participate in the Relay. So we want to create, after the journey maps, what we will call listening posts, ways to listen to and ask questions and get responses back from the aggregate persona group that helps us refine the journey map. So it's hard to make the journey map, make the assumptions, and then just execute. For a lot of organizations, they want to reach out and listen and talk to people. Now, I chose a cat with cool Sony headphones because people love cats in presentations. So how do we create listening posts? We create surveys, often digital surveys, telephone surveys, face-to-face surveys, and we are checking in and testing the assumptions of the attitudes and actions in our sit in a room and map this out. We've got to go back out and test those assumptions. So I would say to truly operationalize something, a lot of organizations should take a step back and do some listening and survey work after the physical journey maps are created. So journey mapping way station number 2. How are you going to test the assumptions, that are built into the journey map? So I gave you the example of the digital survey. It could be SurveyMonkey. It could be telephone survey work. It could be face-to-face survey work if it's a major donor journey. How are you going to test it? Write down, think for a minute. If you've done journey mapping and you haven't tested these assumptions in a journey map, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do it either going back to what you've already done, or make sure that you build it in as an intermediary step between creating the journeys and the true operationalizing of those journey maps. So scribble a few thoughts down, and we're going to keep going. I'm going to reach and have some wonderful water. That's in a beer stein. It's actually water. So 2 organizations, 3 examples. We want to see some real life examples, and we want to get moving into the real stuff here. So I want to thank both MSF, Doctors Without Borders Canada, and WWF Canada for agreeing to share bits and pieces of the work that they're doing with us right now. Very lovely for them to share. And I want to remind people here that you can join our Journey Club and you can share as well. So in the way that they're benefiting you, if you're doing journey mapping, let's make it go in the other direction. I'm going to have another glass of water. So for WWF Canada, here's one journey that they looked at. The new monthly donor to become a long-term and retained monthly donor. Attrition is terribly important because there's a lot of invested money to find that new monthly donor. So, lowering attrition rates have a huge impact on both net revenue over time. And you can see the actual picture on the right-hand side where they were finding moments that matter in that journey connected to the behavior, and you can see both negative and positive being yellow, like happy, excited. Now, I would like to just comment as a journey mapping guy, I would rather see the emotions as I statements, and so you would take happy and you would craft it into an I statement. So I think if we do that again with WWF, that's what I would be looking for. So when we look at that journey, and we look at how to set it up for operational excellence, take a look at what they've done considering what we talked about earlier. The problem this journey map can solve, right, around retention rates, right, for the monthly giving program, right, the moments that matter. A persona is really excited, when they sign up to be, it's that first emotional high, the endorphins and enkephalins and dopamine and all this stuff is kicking in, they're feeling great. So how do you take advantage of that? And the innovation that came out of this to operationalize is tailoring an email welcome series, right? That includes questions and ways to use drip marketing that learn more about their interests and needs as a newly acquired donor, and then being able to give that back to them through marketing automation tools. So the next step for them in the operationalizing of this journey map is to build out a survey online, right? In a way where they can collect information, map it back to that constituent's profile, right? For future conditionalized call to actions, right? So the more personalized, the better. And the survey was a very straightforward way to operationalize that journey map, but they needed to connect it to the problem, right? They had to state the problem, find the solution, right, and then operationalize it through an online survey. And you can see they're saying with this data in hand, right, future communications are going to be tailored to the newly acquired donor through age and interest categories, things they find out about people, so that people feel like they know who they are. I don't feel like a generic new monthly donor, and the journey mapping gave them a way to kind of prioritize and focus on solutions to improve. But we'll come back to this, like how do you track that? And we'll come back in a few slides on ways that you can begin to track that. So continuing on this sharing, and it's so lovely, WWF Canada, wanted to look at people who are followers, right, in social media to get their email addresses. So you can see the emotions and behaviors. You can see on the emotions, like I'm curious, and then you can see I'm indifferent, I don't care, look at all this boring stuff. So the problem, this journey map, right, connect from social to email, right? So I'll get something out of the way so I can actually talk about it. We know that for this organization, donation conversion rates are higher for those on the email list than those on Facebook. And so this journey aims to convert their followers, right, to email subscribers. The moment that matters, of course, after having followed for some time Facebook followers persona, they become indifferent to the organization's social media presence as it seems less relevant, right? So the innovation, a social audience insight report, right, based on this, right, that the innovation is to create a corresponding 4 to 5 ads that have persona-tailored offers as to why each social persona should subscribe to the e-newsletter. So MSF Canada also sharing, fantastic. The journey here was looking at a mid-level donor who was a one-time donor to become a mid-level repeat donor. You can see on the right-hand side as a reminder, right, we've got the persona, there she is. They used some data analysis and analytics to create her persona, and then they began to map, right, the attitudes, the behaviors, the needs, the emotional needs, and the moment needs for those of you who remember this from a past session. And so for them, the moment that matters, they found in this journey mapping that after having made the first significant gift as a middle donor, the donor is surprised by a second ask without having established a more significant level of connection, sharing back and forth, or a more personalized communication to make them feel like the organization cares and knows who they are. So the innovation to operationalize is to invite mid-level donors to a telephone town hall, so a technology that will leverage intimacy of allowing these middle donors to connect with and hear from physicians back from the field. It makes them feel more closely connected to the organization. So Journey Mapping Way Station 3. Let's stop and just think for a minute. How can these examples influence and improve your journey mapping? So if we look at World Wildlife Fund's, social to email journey, if we look at World Wildlife Fund's, first-time monthly donor to being a committed long-time monthly donor, or looking at MSF's mid-donor, right, journey to get them to be repeat middle donor, they all framed problems. They found prioritized solutions, either an online survey, right, bite-sizable things that they could do to influence and improve the journey. Just take a step back. Think for a minute about these examples. Think about the journey mapping that you've done already or may do, and just think out loud and write on the piece of paper. Like how is this getting you thinking? Is it showing you the journeys you should be mapping? Is it reminding you of the solutions and innovations, we'll call them truly, that will make a difference? Take a second and scribble a few things while I grab some life-refreshing water at our way station. Okay, so let's keep moving forward. So when you think, how do you take these journeys, these assumptive models? You might do a database analysis for benchmarking and finding the leaky holes in the bucket. You figure out people's emotions. You go through the behavior lines. You framed, the problems beforehand. Your innovations are pointing to solutions, but still, what? Like, how do you keep track, right, over time to figure out? So if WWF implements this online survey, they may do some data analysis that shows that it is, 80% of the people who are new monthly donors every year stay, right? And they want to get it to 90%. right? What are the things that they're going to use to be able to track and understand whether that's working? And there are two things I'm going to show you. I mean, the first is how do you better leverage Google Analytics? So out of the box, Google Analytics, you're able to look at various metrics and dimensions, right? Really the latter being segments, and that connects to the personas, right, within your database that you've created. For us here at HJC, we do custom work for our clients where you can also set up custom dimensions in Google Analytics that can be perfectly tied to the personas that you've created and mapped. So you can look at persona performance compared to all user performance. So awesome. So let's say it's Emily at Raise More Money for Cancer, right? We get her email. So it's using her email and creating custom dimensions, her email connected to the persona group designated within the database. Awesome. Here's an example. Just what could that look like? Tracking the amount of money within the Emily persona for the Irish Cancer Society. It can get that granular and that persona specific. Awesome. So that's one half. That's the digital Google way to track persona. The other way is to work with data analytic partners to create dashboards. So in the journey mapping process, you are creating the benchmarks, you're choosing the metrics you want to follow over time. And this example, or it could be other technology database partners. This is an example of the dashboards that Blackbaud through DonorCentrics give you. So let's say it is MSF or WWF, and they decide, right, to use dashboarding to track the attrition rates on the new journey of the newly acquired monthly donors, right? So on the screen, there's a monthly retention dashboard, right? So, you know, the screenshot is a monthly retention dashboard. Sections are highlighted. You know, you can begin to see monthly retention by month of gift, and you may have implemented an improvement in the journey in a certain month, and you begin to see whether over time it's having an impact. And so when you look at tools like DonorCentrics dashboarding, you can see, for example, let's say, again, it's WWF and their monthly giving journey. The retention tab lets you analyze retention strategies, right, which we're talking about in a journey map, right? The example here shows both traditional and recurring gifts and all kinds of filters as well that we would predetermine. So you're given these tools, right? The tabs and the dashboarding just give you a way, and remember this, over time, right? It may be that we do the initial data analysis and persona development, we create the journeys, let's say for a monthly giving improvement retention strategy, we implement them over a year, and then we watch, right? Day by day, week by week, month by month in our dashboarding to see what kind of impact, right? And see if it's having the kind of positive impact by fixing a broken journey, for example, through any persona constituent group. And just a reminder that donors just don't stay in one bucket, right? They move to other buckets. And so on the screen, it's a reminder of migration to different giving levels, right? That we want a dashboarding ability that is holistic enough to not just capture what's happening with a persona group within monthly giving, but to be able to track who is moving outside of that group and becoming a middle donor and a major donor. So we're getting a multi-dimensional view of our journey maps and the impact we're having. So I want you to take a step back and think, you know, do you think a dashboard-like tool can help you track the improvements made in a journey over time? right? A lot of us, we haven't been thinking about this, but fundraising is data-driven, right? One of the, I won't call it a weakness, but one of the limitations of journey mapping on the day of is that assumptive nature that we talked about. So we need, you know, an empiricism, and we need tracking tools and dashboards to help us over time see if real numbers are growing, right, or shrinking, or was it worth investing in that journey mapping. And so when we go back to the original title, like, what do I do now? Well, these are the kinds of things that you do. You set up your analytics, you set up your dashboarding, right? You set up your KPIs, you set up the problems to be solved, and you assign who does what, and we get to work over time, right? I mean, that's the important thing, I think, here. Journey maps are about improving a journey over time as well. We find quick wins, and if you go back and listen to the last session, we're talking about quick wins that appear. Like, hey, a great idea appeared, but truly we want to be able to track that journey over time and whether it makes a difference to a whole cohort or constituent group. So I'm almost there at the end. And a few things. For those of you who haven't signed up to the Donor Journey Club, it's really a journey club that is at donorjourney.com. So please, you know, get in there, sign up. It's mobile responsive if you've got your phone there. And we now have over 600 organizations from, I think, now over 30 countries, and we've got 60 new happy people who've joined up in Ireland after I was there in Dublin last week, so that's cool. And in the same way that WWF and MSF are, and CDA share, we want you to share, and we want to see what you're up to in operationalizing your journeys. And then last, I just want to thank everyone to tell you that there'll be a survey that's going to come out. We'll make sure that you have all of the material, and at the end of the webinar, a survey will pop up, and you can fill stuff out. So that's all the time I want to take today. I'm glad so many people have been able to attend. We're just going to keep doing these bite-sizable pieces. We'll make sure you get this content, and I want you to take the next step. We talked about what journey mapping is and was through the Sophia examples last time. Now we're looking at those operational issues and making sure that you have the right foundation, and then we just move forward. So thank you so much for listening in, and we'll make sure that we get to you in the next few weeks with our next webinar. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening in.